board games, perhaps more than any other art form, there are two types of stories. Some board games tell stories. Think of those narrative-driven adventures that weave together players' actions with licks of flavour text on cards, that have branching passages in big old storybooks like a choose-your-own-adventure game, or even just a lore dump at the front of the rulebook. Other games are stories, providing, at the extreme end of things, little more than a mechanical skeleton of rules for players to flesh out with their own memorable moments that happen around the table, rather than on it. Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, it's a bit of a mouthful, I'm just going to call it Oath from now on, sits at the intersection of these two story types. It's as much a game explicitly about stories as it is a game that inspires stories among its players. What makes Oath unlike any board game I've ever played before though, is that it's a game that remembers these stories as much as the players who experience them. Oath takes place in an unnamed empire. It's a land ruled by a chancellor, you or one of your friends. The rest of the group, at least to begin with, are exiles. Upstarts that lack the chancellor's dominance and strength, but have the ability to amass their power, carve out a piece of the empire for themselves, and ultimately wrest control from the current ruler. Unlike designer Cole Wehrle's breakout hit Root, all of the players have the same set of options and actions at their disposal, for the most part anyway. They move their character between three regions, the cradle seat of power, its outlying provinces, and the distant hinterlands, to visit locations, represented by these site cards, and interact with the denizens of the land, represented by yet more cards. Performing actions largely comes down to revealing more cards from the deck and using their abilities. Denizens can occupy a site, making them available to whoever has control of the location and anyone passing through, or be recruited as personal advisors for one player's exclusive use. Alternatively, you can use them to trade Oath's two key resources of favour and secrets. Whether you're using abilities or trading, actions are performed using supply, which refills each turn based on the size of your army. It's an elegant way to make smaller forces more nimble, while powerful warbands cost more to control. On the face of it, Oath's core gameplay is simple. Go somewhere, do something, repeat. Scratch slightly under the surface though, and you'll quickly find the impressively complex and impeccably considered strategy game you'd expect from the mind behind Root, Pax Pamir and John Company. Oath is a game of small, thoughtful details that come together to envelop the players in its evocative world and deep strategy, all without burying you in pages of established lore or overly complicated rules. Take Favour for instance, represented by these coin-like tokens. These ones are metal because we're sent the Kickstarter edition by later games. It circulates in a closed economy between the players and a number of different factions, rather than in and out of a central supply or bank. When players pay to use a card's ability, their favour goes to the matching faction, and the opposite when they trade for favour using the same card. That means that a popular faction can find itself short or flush with cash, with the player's choices determining the strength and sway of the land's inhabitants. In practice, it's as simple as moving coins between matching symbols, but considering which factions might be able to aid your opponents, and sucking away the influence of those that could, becomes a key part of the crunching gears of the world. Contrasting the back and forth transaction of favour, secrets, these books presumably stuffed with everybody's gossip a la Mean Girls, instead act as a renewable currency that returns to the respective player's board at the end of their turn. It represents the more underhanded intrigue and influence of the player's character. Like the ideas of favour and secrets, Oath's places and peoples are deliberately evocative rather than explicit. Visiting the buried giant, conversing with the storyteller, experiencing the vision of faith, and acquiring the darkest secret, they conjure up powerful images of the world. They're helped by hundreds of stunning illustrations from Root artist Kyle Ferrin, who continues to produce peerless work here. Importantly, the extent of the game's storytelling is confined to these names and images, with not a word of flavour text in sight. It all speaks to Oath's impressive ability to show, rather than tell, rightly confident that its gameplay and visuals are enough to spark the imagination of players into making the world their own. This personal collaborative world building isn't limited to some abstract imagined way outside of the game either. The cherry on top of Oath's generous helpings of rich gameplay and lashings of narrative source is the Chronicle system. A little like the permanent alterations and player-driven effects seen in games like Pandemic Legacy, and at the same time nothing like that, the Chronicle system offers the similar sense that every session of Oath is connected. The difference here is that there's no fixed story arc or definitive end, and the game's pieces are never torn up or permanently changed. The world can keep evolving and changing forever. The sights and denizens on the board at the start of the next game reflect the outcome of the last. A chancellor ousted from power can see their allies and advisors cast from the land for generations, and their empire reduced to ruins, literally, while the cradle of power rearranges around the regions held by the newly crowned exile-turned-ruler as they construct new edifices and reward those who helped them in their rise. Even the way in which a player rises to power has a defining effect on the shape of the land. Each game sees the current chancellor attempt to cling to power, attempting to maintain their rule in the face of the exile's varied threats. Rise to power with military might and you'll need to keep control of your lands by force. Gather the backing of the people and you'll need to keep topping up their diminishing favour or risk revolt. Scheme with intrigue and your own secrets will need to remain protected. The game opens with a single way of winning. The Chancellor begins in the lead but must keep running to stay ahead. But more can soon be discovered and introduced to play by the exiles, escalating the danger they pose and forcing the Chancellor to fight on multiple fronts. It's a brilliantly thematic way of capturing the uneasy nature of being in power, while also giving players more than one objective to pursue. Oath chooses its moments of excitement carefully too. Campaigns, which are fights between players to seize land, precious relics and banners, or simply to trash their supply of favour, are suitably costly and devastating. Dice rolls land like bombshells, providing the chance to multiply a paltry defence to an impenetrable shield, or sacrifice attackers for unstoppable power. The nail-biting unpredictability means battles are never a foregone conclusion and never lose their potency. Every session of Oath drums itself into a crescendo, with early turns spent building momentum and searching for openings to threaten the Chancellor, before things finally come to a head. It's a race for the current ruler to hold on until the terrifically tense 5th round, when a single die roll can end the game, often in their favour. Get ready to adore or despise this little bastard. Whichever side you're on, hoping for one more round to make your grab for the throne, or dreading the need to fend off another barrage of attacks, makes for a suitably thrilling finale. And like an especially comfy armchair, the seat of power ultimately has room for only one backside, but players can cram onto the throne together before squeezing their opponent out onto the cold floor. One of Oath's gameplay masterstrokes is the ability for the Chancellor to offer citizenship to an exile, turning them into an unlikely ally at the cost of a precious relic from their treasury, along with anything else the exile can convince them to part with. It's a risky but sometimes necessary move that comes with risks and advantages to both players. The exile loses their autonomy, merging their troops and supply with their newfound ruler, but gains the opportunity to sneakily usurp the Chancellor as their successor via an additional win condition. For the Chancellor, meanwhile, it boosts their military presence and softens an enemy into a frenemy, though that largely just means the chance to catch a dagger in the back rather than the front. The interaction between players as they shift between opposition and alliances leads to Oath's greatest moments. While playing the game for review, I had a session where the Chancellor was forced into partnership with the exile they had previously been feuding over territory with, in order to stop a next round win by another player who had executed a sudden vision reveal, only for the player to try to then force the newly allied citizen back into exile, a very costly endeavour to avoid losing to a would-be successor. Moments like these in Oath stand up as some of the most exciting and memorable I've had in any game, cementing this as among the finest frameworks for emergent storytelling on the tabletop that I've experienced. This exceptional storytelling and strategy does come at a cost, though it's ultimately one that I think is worth paying. Oath's guided tutorial, as a tip, when you first open the box, don't just immediately crack open every pack of cards you see. The tutorial does a really good job of introducing the basic gameplay concepts while you play, running through almost everything you need to know in the space of a few turns, before letting you loose to dig into its depths. That said, there's still a lot to absorb up front in terms of concepts and terminology, and you'll likely need a full game or two to really grease its mechanical cogs before you feel fully comfortable and able to enjoy the collaborative world building and narrative. The other cost that Oath demands is time. It's as broad as it is deep, with games towards the upper end of the 1 to 6 player count racking up the hours. I've played multiple games with groups of 2, 3 and 4 in person, as well as using Later Games' official scripted mod. It's on Tabletop Simulator if you want to give it a go. And I found 4 people to be the sweet spot to allow the necessary interplayer politics to blossom. With 4 though, the downtime between turns really becomes apparent. With 6, I can imagine having to set aside a handful of hours, especially with newcomers, expect to play for 5, 6 or maybe even more hours. While the basic actions are quick to grasp and perform, the game's meat really comes in the interaction between players and the endless possible combinations of cards on the table, and that requires spending time and energy, likely over multiple sessions, to really get the most of. Not all that time will be spent playing either. The game setup is fast once you're familiar, you can get playing in like under 5 minutes, but it backloads the need to rebuild the world deck that represents Oath's dynamic universe after each session. Doing so provides a pleasing preview of the next game setup. I started thinking it as like next time on Oath, but it can be odd to then just pack it all away if you don't have time for another run as much as you might want. It's also worth saying that while Oath's open narrative isn't as dependent on the same group of players returning to the table for every session as something like Pandemic Legacy, its emergent stories, strategies and world thrive best with the same group of people, who can form memorable mini-narratives as they pledge and break alliances across handfuls of playthroughs. This is one of the longest reviews I've ever written about a game, but Oath is the kind of game that makes you want to talk about it, with the people you play with people who wonder what board games have to offer at their best, and with anyone who just loves hearing fun stories of diplomacy, intrigue and betrayal in colourful fantasy worlds. In my opinion, Cole Wehrle has added another masterpiece to his already gleaming collection of games that are as interesting around the table as they are on it. If you're willing to invest in Oath, Oath will repay you handsomely. It won't forget the games you play, and neither will you. So that's Oath then. Honestly, I expect it will be one of my personal games of the year, or at least take something really exceptional to top, and I think it's something that I'll keep going back to for a long time to come. If you missed the Kickstarter, which is the version we've been showing off in this video, the retail version of the game, which does include some of the fancier bits like the metal coins or the wooden secrets books, but it's still very, very nice. It will be released later this summer, I think in August sometime. And if you're looking for more Oath, you're in luck. We actually have a full playthrough right here on the Dicebreaker YouTube channel with Cole Wehrle himself. I also spoke to Cole about his inspirations for the game in an interview you can also find on the channel. And if you're after more board game and tabletop news, reviews, designer interviews and much, much more, you can find it right here on youtube.com/Dicebreaker or over at dicebreaker.com, where you'll find articles from the whole team and our group of wonderful contributors. But for now, that's my review of Oath. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until we meet again, be it in your empire or mine, thank you for watching, and have a lovely day.